run out of momentum. Then the government would have been able to arrest the student leaders one by one and disband the independent unions. So it was necessary to escalate the movement, to use more radical methods and apply more pressure to force the government to concede to our demands. Since demonstrations and sit-down strikes no longer bothered the government, we felt the next step should be a hunger strike.
Wang Dan told me about the hunger strike, and I immediately signed on. Then we tried to persuade the leaders of the independent student unions, but some of them were firmly opposed to a hunger strike. I think they have a tendency towards opportunism.
As is so often the case, democratic procedures were getting in the way of political action. Unable to achieve a consensus within the independent student unions, the people in favor of a hunger strike bypassed the new organization and made personal appeals to the students.
On the evening of May 12th, Chai Ling and I addressed the students. She did most of the talking. She said that the government was forcing us to put our lives on the line. She was crying emotionally. This got everyone really stirred up.
I said, we are staging a hunger strike in order to reveal the true face of the government and the true face of the people. We want to see whether the Chinese have any conscience, whether there is any hope for China. I said, we are prepared to face death for the sake of true life. The oath written by our lives will brighten the skies of our country.
At noon on May 13th, the hunger strikers shared a last ceremonial meal. The strikers wanted the government to repeal the April 26th editorial and hold televised talks with the students. That morning, the government had met one of these demands. They'd agreed to talks with the dialogue group. But by the time this news reached the universities, the hunger strikers had already set out for Tiananmen Square. Their declaration, born of a tradition of romantic communist rhetoric, was both heroic and deeply emotional. It even included some lines from Mao's youth. This country is our country, this people, our people. If we don't speak out, who will? If we don't take action, who will? At the height of youthful happiness and beauty, the hunger strikers proclaimed, we must resolutely leave everything behind us. Mother China, witness now the actions of your sons and daughters. Can you remain indifferent as hunger devours our youth and death approaches?
我是一匹来自北方的狼，走在无垠的旷野中，凄厉的北风吹过，漫漫的黄沙掠过。
很不容易，尤其是昨天晚上3点到凌晨之间这一段，同学们又冷又饿，但同学们挺过来了。很有可能我们还要挺过像昨天这样的第3个、第5个夜晚。希望大家能够尽可能的坚持到底。有没有决心？有。谢谢大家，真是好战友。
The hunger strike could not have come at a worse time for the government. That week, a historic meeting, years in preparation, was to take place. The president of the Soviet Union, Mikhail Gorbachev, was coming to China. A grand welcoming ceremony was scheduled to take place in Tiananmen Square, which was filled at the moment with thousands of students.
On May 15th, the government planned to welcome Gorbachev at Tiananmen Square. Everyone knew that the square would have to be cleared. So the students thought that if they staged the hunger strike there, the government would definitely respond by May 15th. I heard many students talk like this.
On the afternoon of May 14th, less than 24 hours before Gorbachev's arrival, the government began talks with the dialogue group. The main official representative was Yan Mingfu, a leading reformist minister. Some students who had initiated the hunger strike were also present. Wu Kaishi was one of them.
The biggest victory of the whole movement was that our hunger strike forced the government to the negotiating table. We demanded a live television broadcast, but the government agreed only to a pre-recorded broadcast. So we made a concession on this point. We felt that a pre-recorded broadcast was in itself a hard-won achievement.
But the hunger strikers who were waiting at the square did not hear the promised broadcast. Feeling betrayed, many of them rushed to the meeting hall and disrupted the session.
So the talks were wrecked by the students themselves. I felt that May 14th was a big setback for the student movement. After this, the students missed many more opportunities by repeating the same mistakes.
It was the eve of Gorbachev's arrival, and talks between the students and the government had broken down.
When we speak of the government, we're talking about two kinds of people: the reformers who were in power at the time and the hardliners who opposed them. Reform was in a very precarious situation and came under constant attack. The reformers hoped for social stability so that they could continue their difficult work. The hardliners had been using all kinds of underhanded tactics to get Deng Xiaoping to turn against the reformers. But they hadn't seen much success. So they wanted to create a massive crisis in order to get rid of the reformers, as they had Hu Yaobang. I was worried that reform would be derailed. If that happened, then all the grand sloganizing about democracy, about abolishing dictatorship, and so on, would simply be a lot of hot air. The 12 scholars, journalists, and critics were well-known supporters of liberal reform in China and widely respected. They all praised the students, but called on them to change their tactics.
The problem with these intellectuals was that they were playing the wrong role. They were acting as mediators between the students and the government. We made the government agree to face-to-face negotiations. This was the first time in 40 years, and we accomplished it. We, the students, acting as an independent political force. And then, when we invited the intellectuals to join us,